So I went on with my life, but because of my belief in myself, my beliefs about life, I attracted many abusive men and many menial jobs. And it took a long time before I could begin to turn that around because I had no self-worth. However, in time, things began to change. And I remember at one point, I married in my late 20s, I married a wonderful Englishman. He taught me social skills, and it was a very nice period of my life for about 14 years. And then one day he wanted a divorce. And of course, I was totally devastated because once again, I was saying, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I can never do it right. But I didn't realize at the time that life was really giving me an opportunity to move into a new phase. And while it was very difficult for me for some time, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And my teacher appeared in the form of a class. A friend said to me, I'm going to a lecture tonight, would you like to come with me? And I went. And it literally began the turning point of my life. I was in my early 40s, and these people told me that if I was willing to change my thinking, I could change my life. And it was the most important thing that I think I have ever heard in my life. And while I didn't know what they were talking about and didn't really know what they meant, something inside of me said yes. And so I started to go to classes and read books and listen to tapes and make notes furiously and study. I, who had been a high school dropout and had never studied anything in my life, suddenly found a subject that absolutely fascinated me, the way my mind worked and the influence it had on my body and on my life. So I was studying away, and time passed, and my life started to change. I was doing affirmations and making some progress, and I started to get what I call the green lights in the parking places, when the little things in life start to work for you. And I thought I was pretty hot stuff. And I was in those days. I was doing well. And after a time, I got to a point where I began to teach what I knew and work with people on how to help them change their consciousness, to change their lives. And then one day, I was diagnosed with cancer. And just like anyone else who is diagnosed with cancer, I went into total panic. I was absolutely petrified. But I did have something on my side. I had tools to work with because I had worked with other people. And at that point, I knew that the mental equivalent for the disease called cancer is resentment. Deep, old resentment that literally eats away at the body over time. I remember calling my teacher and saying, they say I have cancer. And he said to me, Louise, you cannot have done all the work you've done on yourself to die of cancer. Now let's take a positive approach. And I remember clinging to that statement. And I began to do all the things I could figure out to do to handle this. I knew that if I would have the operation that they said I must have, and I didn't clear the mental pattern that was contributing to this disease, then they'd just keep cutting Louise until there was no more Louise left. You see, I don't believe that doctors don't get it all out. I think that we contribute to a condition in our bodies, we go have an operation, we come back, and we live life in exactly the same way. We don't change our thinking, we don't change our habits, we don't change our attitudes. And of course, the condition comes back. So I remember doing a lot of praying, a lot of affirmations, a lot of visualizations, I used to visualize several times a day cool, clear water flowing through my body, washing out the diseased cancer cells. I also went to a good nutritionist, and this person helped me detoxify my body, take the negative junk out of my body that I had so unknowingly eaten for so many years. And then I also went to a good therapist and detoxified my mind of the junk thoughts that I had been carrying around for so very long. This was a therapist who was able to help me release the angers and the resentment that had to have been within me from having carried that for so long. But one of the most important things that happened was that I learned about forgiveness from a personal point of view. I realized that my stepfather, who was so abusive, was once born a beautiful, innocent little baby, like all of us. So the story was how to figure out he got from that point of a baby, a beautiful baby, to the place where he would be so abusive. And I began to explore his childhood, and I realized that he was also a highly abused child. In fact, he had a twin brother who was so traumatized by the family experience that he went into an institution and never came out. Now, this was not to condone his behavior. It was not to say that what he did was okay, but it was to have some understanding on why and how it could have happened. And as I began to understand, I was able to begin the forgiveness process, which was not for him, but it was for me. It was time to heal my wounds. And in 6 months of absolutely intense concentration and doing everything I could think of the right thing to do, I remember, I know I had more to eat, but it seems that the only thing I can remember is sprouts and pureed asparagus. But I did all these things, and all of them combined. Within 6 months, I was able to get the medical profession to agree with what I already knew, that I no longer had cancer. And this was an extraordinarily powerful experience for me, because I began to realize that if we're willing to do the work, and many of us are not. You know, there are lots of people would rather die than change their diet, and they do. But if we're really willing to do the work, almost anything can be healed. I have spoken since, or many people who have come through cancer have said to me, and I've heard this over and over again, that it was probably the most powerful experience of their life because it gave them the opportunity to change. And by changing, they not only healed their body, but they healed their lives. So this was a very big thing for me. And I went forth, I continued to go forth and to teach and share my experiences with others and help them learn how to release their own traumas. And today, I live a totally different life than I ever have before. My thinking is completely different. Abusive men do not know I exist. I'm no longer sending out those signals. And I rejoice in all that is going on in my life.